Wendell, as you guys get back from a long trip like that, how do you go about resetting and preparing for a game tomorrow?
I think today was a great day. We got up and down a lot, just going over concepts and things, getting the body back used to this time zone. Other than that, I think just getting your rest, proper rest, making sure you're not oversleeping or undersleeping. I think those are two of the biggest things. Just understanding that at the end of the day, it's still a business. We got a game tomorrow. We got to figure out how to get a win, string some wins together, try to get on the right side of this track that we're on right now.
You mentioned trying to string some wins together. What's the outlook of this, the mindset of this team at this point? I guess technically right over the halfway point.
We haven't lived up to the standard that we all know that we can play at, but at the same time, we're 3 or 4 games back from the second seed, so you have to take that and understand, we don't want it to come down to the last game of the season to determine it, but we do have to understand that, we had our woes throughout the season, and I think, especially now, it's definitely a time for us to try our best to steal some games. Not even necessarily steal them, but just win some games, and just move up the standings.
You guys have seen the kind of push you can make in the second half of the season. I think you guys have virtually the same record the last 2 years. Yep. Do you learn lessons from those experiences for what you can do as the calendar turns to February, March, April, and you get closer to the playoffs, or kind of what's the mindset on we've been here before, we can do this again?
I think just as a team, with this being now my 8th year in the league, I know that you want to peak at the right time. You don't want to be a early season team where you start off high and then you don't sustain it, and you don't want it to be vice versa. You just want to be able to just continue to trend in the right direction, and then once you get towards the end of the season, be in a position to feel comfortable. I think the biggest thing also being healthy. Just kind of have all the pawns kind of aligned in the right spot going into the postseason. So that's kind of been our mindset. We like you said, we've shown that we can turn it up at the end of the season, but we also don't want that to be our trend. We just have to do a better job just in the future of just being able to stay consistent from the very first game to the 82nd game of the season, 82nd game of the season.
How tough is that? I mean, to be in a similar spot when this team had so much bigger expectations coming into this year. Or is it frustrating, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's frustrating for sure. We're competitors. We know what we're capable of, but you never want to look give too much of your attention to the past. You want to look into the future, stay in the present, control what you can control. We lost those games, we can't change it now, but we got to find ways to make sure those things don't happen again. We're going to be playing against a lot of the same teams coming up here. So a lot of teams that we're familiar with, so we just got to figure it out. That's something that's, with the 12 guys that's in that locker room, or 15 guys in that locker room, we're figuring that out. The coaching staff, we come together, and each and every night, we do the best we can to get that win. So we try not to live too much in the past, but understand that we definitely are not at our full potential at all.
Is there any type of silver lining you can take from all the different lineups because of injuries that you guys have had in play this year that can maybe help you down the stretch of the season?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The first 2 guys that come to mind is Jace and Noah. Those 2 guys have been phenomenal with the minutes they've been given. 2 young guys that they're learning this game at a very fast pace, and they play hard. Whether they're making mistakes or making the right play, they're doing it at 100%. So I can always respect that. And I think going later on into the season, even postseason maybe, they can definitely help us. They can definitely help us be able to throw a wrinkle out there. You're playing against that same teams multiple times, they're going to start to understand the diet of what you do and what you don't do. Having multiple guys that can go out there and do score points, get rebounds, whatever the case may be, is very important.
Coach talked about the start to games, and obviously the last 2 games you guys didn't get off to the start of the game. How important is it to start the game on the right foot in the first quarter and kind of set the tone for the rest of the game?
It's important. It's important. Those I think last 3, honestly. Well, not last 3, last 2 have been definitely not been to our standard, nowhere near at all. We've kind of regressed in a way, whether that's intensity, whether that's physicality, whether that's communication. We kind of took a dip in those things in those last 2 games, but like I said, we try not to look too much to the past and thinking that that's the kind of team we are, but at the same time, you do have to address those things and figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen. I think we did a really good job of that in practice today.
You mentioned health. You obviously got Franz back on that trip. There's obviously still a little bit of working him, working well when Jalen comes back, working him back into the fold. But how much of a lift did Franz's return give to you guys, and how can you help him kind of find his footing again?
Franz is one of those guys. His IQ for the game is so high, and he just makes it easier for everyone around him. So even with him not even being at 100% in Germany, he just makes the right plays night in and night out. So. He's one of those guys, once he is at 100%, it'll just help this team be even better on both ends of the court. And then, a guy like Jalen Suggs, who, in my opinion, is one of the engines of this team, helps this team go. Adding him, Mo also coming back, I think that's – sorry about that. He's definitely going to just help the trajectory of this team. So, like I was saying before, we peak at the right time.
Every year before the All-Star game approaches, we hear this team is here, this team is here. Yeah. Is there a conscious effort talk in the locker room that, hey, as the All-Star game approaches, let's try and get to here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. That's something I've noticed now, playing for this team and us being now a consistent playoff team. We understand that, around this time is when you like to, peak, be at your best. I think I said this in one of my old interviews. A lot of teams like to start taking off around this time, so this is a time where we can kind of just turn it up, try to get us some more wins and move up in the standings. So I think that's very important. It's definitely something that's on our mind for sure.
Thanks, Dale.